Hello, and welcome to Week 5 of the Little Legends League. This week I'm playing the Catalan Chefs, coached by RubenPaCe. As a quick note, Ruben replaced another player who had to drop out and did a completely new draft with the leftovers. That being said, he still has some very scary offensive threats like Dragapult, Zamazenta, and Volcarona. He also has a stalwart defensive core between Skarm, Quagsire, Umbreon, and Porygon 2. I think he has a really good team, so let's get into my prep. As per usual, I started my team building with Magearna. Ruben's only forms of Hazard Control are Rapid Spin Kamala and, more realistically, Magic Bounce Hatterene. I wanted Hazard to pressure his team, so I figured Magearna could do a good job at setting them since he can threaten Hatterene with Flash Cannon. I also ran Draining Kiss since it provides valuable longevity and hits a lot of things on Ruben's team. Finally, I ran Calm Mind so I could boost up in front of passive mons like Umbreon and Porygon 2. Magearna had a good balance of defensive utility, offensive pressure, and hazard stacking. Next up is my mandatory Zamazenta counter, Giratina. Zamazenta's speed and boosting ability makes it a potent sweeper, so Giratina was necessary to stop that from ever happening. To prevent it from being too passive against Zamazenta and getting worn down by Crunch, I decided to run Psychic to hit super effectively. Giratina also served my Volcarona counter thanks to the natural type matchup, so I ran Roar to prevent from getting at multiple Quiver Dances, and Poltergeist to hit its weak physical defense. Giratina was not only a wall, but could also hit its targets pretty hard. Next up is Choice Scarf Mienshao to provide some speed control. I knew that Dragapult's blistering speed was going to be an issue, so I needed something that could outrun and threaten it. I ran 216 speed EVs and a Jolly Nature to outrun +1 Volcarona, which I could Oko with Stone Edge. I ran Close Combat for Stab, Knockoff for general utility and a way to hit Pult, and finally U-Turn for pivoting. I also ran Regenerate to shrug off weaker hits and hazards damage. Nothing fancy here, just a basic Scarfer. At the 4th slot is Thundurus. My idea with Thundy was to set up nasty plots on more passive Pokemon like Porygon 2, Umbreon, and Skarmory. I didn't need Thundurus to outspeed anything really, so I invested in Bulk instead, so I could take hits from Zamazenta, Pult, or anything that is setting up on. I ran Thunderbolt for Stab, Dark Pulse for Dragapult, and Focus Blast for Umbreon, as well as Trace Porygon, which can eat Thunderbolts. With nasty plot enough bulk to reliably get that boost, Thundurus can be a really good wall breaker. Next up is the greatest Pokemon of all time, Swalot. I decided to bring bulky Terra Dark Swalot as a switch-in for Dragapult and for general utility. With this bulk, I could always live a modest Draco Meteor from full and strike back with a strong knockoff. I ran enough speed to outrun Umbreon and Porygon 2 and disrupt them with Encore. I also went with Toxic Spike since I didn't expect Dragalge to come due to its poor match against Magearna. I rounded the set off with Gunk Shot for strong stab. So I wasn't going to do anything special here, but it would just help me pivot around Pult and disrupt the walls. Finally, I brought Necrozma as a Dragon Dance sweeper. With max speed, it could outrun Dragapult at +1, and otherwise, I just ran max attack for all the power it could get. I gave Necrozma Terra Steel so I could have a better matchup against Umbreon, Dragalge, and Hatterene, as well as dodging other miscellaneous super effective hits. Iron Head is nice since I don't have to use Terra to access it, and it can hit Hatterene and Umbreon. The special sauce with this set is the Power Herb Solar Beam, which I ran to snipe Quagsire since it could otherwise wall Necrozma due to Unaware. I was really hoping to see Quagsire just so I could pull off the Solar Beam. And that concludes the Week 5 team. This is a pretty long battle, so let's get right into it. Alright, so getting into the battle, we see the expected Dragapult lead. I lead off with Magearna to immediately threaten that, and threaten some spikes. But I didn't want to go for spikes yet, since the Hatterene could pretty easily switch in. Just go for a Drain Kiss. Volcarona gets a nice Flame Body proc, which is a little unfortunate for me, but not too big of a deal. So I go into Giratina, since that's always going to be a switch in for Volcarona. Fire Dance no damage basically. I go for the Poltergeist to hit it, but instead catch Hatterene on the switch, which does a ton of damage, so it's great progress against the Hat. Magearna can always take on Hatterene, so I go into that, unless it ran Mystical Fire, which I wouldn't expect to hit against Giratina. But since it switched out, I go ahead and go for my Spike, take out Umbreon as a baton passes out to Volcarona. Again, Giratina always switches in here. I'm just going to give you forewarning. It's going to be a long battle, which at some point I am going to speed up once we get to that point, but until then, we've got a Spike up, we've got Roar going. Yeah, this is a good position for me early game. I'm going to Magearna, just to, take on whatever that Porygon might want to do. Goes into Umbreon. So here I expect Hatterene to come in and try to take that Spike. Instead, just baton passes out to Volcarona, which again, that's fine. They make a nice double here, because I have to basically go into Giratina. I cannot stay in with the Magearna against Volcarona. So Umbreon comes back in, I go back to Magearna. See a theme here, I'm just switching between these two forever. As they finally go for Wish, I decide to Calm Mind up here. As they go into Volcarona, I thought they might protect, instead they just heal up the Volk. So they do manage to get a bit of health back on Volcarona, and you know, they can do that for a long time with Wish. Volcarona goes for the Quiver Dance finally. That's obviously not allowed, so I go for the Poltergeist, hitting Umbreon, which is getting pretty low at this point. So at this point I decide to go for Roar just to keep that Umbreon low, because if I can Roar it, I can pretty reliably prevent it from getting that Wish. So I roar it out, expecting to switch in again. Wish lands on full health Skarmy, which is good for me, as he goes for a Spike, which is going to be pretty important later. I go into Thundurus on the Skarmory, as I go for Porygon. I get my Nasty Plot up, as I go Terra Ghost on the Porygon, which I did see that in the pregame, so I read that. As it does strike back with a pretty strong Ice Beam, but the Porygon 2 goes down to a consecutive Dark Pulse. They go into Dragapult here, and I don't really want to risk Thundurus yet since it's good against Skarmory, so I go into Mr. Swat. It does seem to be modest specs from that damage, and they get the special defense drop, sorry. As I go for Terra Dark, and unfortunately the high roll does kill Swalot. So Swalot, once again, unfortunately is going to be a failure. I go for the knock there. Again, another Flame Body proc immediately. Kind of sucks, because now the Inshine is pretty much neutered. And Volcarona reveals Morning Sun, so this thing's going to be around for a while. Here I go for Poltergeist, and here we can see a flaw in my team building and my brain in the battle. The anti-synergy between Poltergeist and Knockoff was a big problem for me this game. They go into Hatterene to get another Poltergeist off, so Hatterene's down, which is nice, but we can already see how this Volcarona is going to be a huge issue for Giratina. I decided to roar it out again, get into Skarmory, which I decided to go on Thundurus here, so Thundurus pretty much always switches in on the Skarm. They go into Umbreon as basically just a stack for Thunderbolt, and at this point they go into Dragapult. So I decide to stay in with the Thundurus and revenge kill the Dragapult with Dark Pulse, and here I'm thinking, I'm up 5-2, we got the Dragapult, I'm looking good. However, we still have a long way to go, so I'm going to start speeding this up. So we got Volcarona boosting up a bit, Quiver Dance, roared out as usual. I go into Necrozma here kind of just to see if I can start boosting up against Skarmory. If it reels, Whirlwind. And this Whirlwind plus Spike Stack, there's no removal. It's a huge problem. I go into Thundurus, trying to catch another Whirlwind, huge mistake. That was a huge mistake, because I get knocked out by the Body Press. And now you can see how this is probably going to go. Skarmory is absolutely free to Whirlwind. Magearna cannot threaten it, so it only has Draining Kiss and Flash Cannon. You see Flash Cannon doing a decent 31%, but really not enough, especially since Skarm is faster. And with that burn, I'm not able to chip heal. Pretty disastrous situation here. Volcarona sure takes the spikes damage, but it's really not enough. Magearna is basically dead at this point, but I do go into Giratina since it can easily still live the Volcarona attacks. So it goes for a Morning Sun to stay healthy. I finally go for a rest. And yeah, Quiver Dance, rest, Morning Sun. I don't want to keep you here for too long. We're going to go hyper fast. It's time. Because I think this is one of the longest, if not the longest, draft we go for. So I'm basically forced to just roar repeatedly. Trying to just rack up big damage against the Volcarona. Not really able to hit the Skarmory with Giratina. Here's what I'm thinking. I should have run Shadow Ball. If I run Shadow Ball here, this is still winnable. However, due to the way I set up my team, I'm in a really lame situation here where I'm just roaring and using Psychic against Skarm. And with that Morning Sun, Volcarona is never gonna die, basically. Not in time, with only one Spike and Roar. So, yeah. Basically just stuck here. Go for Close Combat, only doing 18 against Skarmory after the burn. Magearna finally goes down because he can't do anything. The crossbow also really can't do anything. Hit it with the solar beam, because why not? I mean, I'm going to reveal it here in this video anyway, so may as well. Yeah, I think you can see how this is going to end, because I basically have no way to defeat the Skarm, Anvil, and Corona combined because of that healing. So Giratina is going to try its best, but as you can see that PP is running pretty low at this point. I mean, turn 85 of a draft is pretty ridiculous. Like, you almost never see that. I mean, if you're gonna see it with anyone, it's gotta be Ruben's team because of how bulky it is, but yeah, again, I'm really just not able to do any sort of meaningful threats against these two, especially with, again, Miensha being burned was a huge deal, because then Skarm can just sit on it easily. Maybe if it hadn't been burned, you know, close combat could do a bit more damage. But the way this went, it's finally down to Giratina. Can't get Whirlwinded down, but unfortunately, Giratina is actually going to run out of PP here. Finally struggling. And yeah, this game is going to end with Giratina struggling. Something you've maybe never even seen before. At turn 116, Ruben tops me 2-0. Good game, Ruben. Yeah, you played it well. The Skarmory, I really underprepared for, and throwing away the Thundurus was definitely my downfall. But, you know, I'm still 4-1. Still, I think, number 2 or 3 at this point in the rankings. Looking good for playoffs still. So this game, I think, you know, it's not a huge defeat, but it's definitely a good learning opportunity. You know, that anti-synergy between Poltergeist and Knockoff, getting the Thundurus thrown away too easily, not really preparing for the Skarm spike stack. Yeah, there's definitely a lot of things I've learned from this match, and hopefully I can take that forward and do better going here forth. If you're still around after 116 turns of hell, thank you for watching and sticking around with me. Hope you'll subscribe, like the video. Of course, we'll be doing this at least into week 1 of playoffs, since I expect to make that. And yeah, thanks for watching. Bye.